Ain't gotta spend the time, it's free. No, it's gonna be a wild night. Let's go. Doors open, you don't need a key. Show you how to live the wild life. Yeah. Let's see the bottom. Hey, yeah. Let's hit the throttle. Yeah, hands going up. Let's hit the dance floor and get
Hello, welcome to The Wild Review on The Wild Reviewer, and today I'm going to review a thing. Well, seeing that we're only a few days away from Christmas, it's kind of hard to avoid all those Christmas movies because they're playing all on TV. And it's safe to say that there really isn't one bad Christmas movie. Unless that movie is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Unlike movies such as Elf, The Santa Claus, The Grinch, Polar Express, or Christmas Vacation, it's most likely that you've never really heard of this movie. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you thought that this movie was a myth, much like the Star Wars holiday special. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians was a movie that was put out in 1964, and it was an attempt to mix both Christmas and sci-fi together. Unfortunately, it didn't do very well. It's got a very low rating basically anywhere, and was actually said to be one of the worst Christmas movies ever. So, I got my notes, I saw the film twice, and boy did I cringe. This is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. So the movie opens up with its own little theme tune. It's not like Santa Claus Conquers the Martian theme song. We have this song sung by a whole bunch of kids as they're screaming the song, "Hooray for Santa Claus," and they're literally screaming it. The song is being played to the opening titles of the movie, which look more like closing credits. They are 3 minutes long. So when the movie actually starts, we see a news reporter reporting on KID-TV. I give you a second to figure out what that means. Clever, right? He's saying that another news reporter is at the North Pole about to interview Santa and his elves, because we're just establishing it right here that Santa does exist in this movie. So the news reporter who is on TV is being watched by no other than Martians. You thought I was gonna say ordinary kids, right? No, it's Martians. So the news reporter's at the North Pole, surprisingly not, freezing his balls off, and he just makes his way into Santa's workshop uninvitedly and has a little interview with Santa, who claims to be very busy as he's just painting one spot on a little toy. I will say that the guy that they got to play Santa does make a pretty good Santa in this film. In fact, I would actually rank him to be one of, maybe not the best, but one of the best Santas in cinema. Maybe like in the tens. I'd rank him on number 10. Yeah, number 10. So, one of our main Martian characters is named Kmar. Not Kmart, Kmar. He's got two kids that were watching the little news report, and he's very concerned about the kids on Mars because they aren't really very fun. They're not happy. They're basically dull and boring, and he wants to know why they're so fascinated in Earth television. And as Kmar is about to talk with his kids, there's this really stupid part. Usually in like these sci-fi movies, you know, when they want to move something, you know, you do something like in Star Wars, you use the Force and you just go like this. To open doors, these Martians just point. They point at the door and nothing, you know? They have a lot of these things that they do that has no sound effect at all. When they shoot a gun, you know, you just hear the gun pop. Pop. No sound effect whatsoever. I'm supposed to believe that they're very magic just by pointing at the door to make it open. So Kmart gets a whole bunch of Martians together, including one Martian named Voldar. Remember that name. They all summon this old Martian known as the Ancient One, and they try to figure out what's different on Earth that's making Earth children happy, and why the Mars kids are not happy, why they're fascinated in Earth. The Ancient One says that it's near Christmas time on Earth, and Santa Claus will be bringing joy to all the kids, which is why they're all gonna be happy. So the Martians are like, hey, if the Earth children are happy because of the Santa Claus guy, then we gotta have the Santa Claus guy as well. So the Martians decide, hey, we're gonna kidnap Santa so this way he can make our kids all happy. So Kmar and his Martian friends get inside this ship and travel to Earth to where they plan on taking Santa. So the Martians find Santa on like their little screens, but they see numerous Santas. One of them sees him in front of a store, another one sees him on like a street block. So they find a whole bunch of different Santas. So then they stop their ship, land on Earth, and come across these two little kids just hanging out in the woods named Billy and Betty Foster. The typical names for a child to have in the 60s. And the Martians question them about Santa, and they figure, they could use these kids as really good information and big help, so they just take the kids, and Betty and Billy just don't react. They're just like, okay, they don't scream or anything, they're just taken by the arm, and they're like, come on, let's go, and they're just, alright, they don't try to, stop them or anything. They're okay with getting kidnapped by Martians. So we're 30 minutes in and the Martians finally land in the North Pole, and Billy and Betty find this as a chance for them to escape because at this point they realize, okay, this is not good. So the Martians realize that Billy and Betty have escaped, so now they're spending a good 5 minutes trying to find them. Billy and Betty hide in this little cave, and then the Martian Voldar starts looking for them, and Voldar is basically the bad guy in the film. I just want to establish that he's the bad Martian in the film. And he has something against the kids, so he ends up looking for them, and then we see a polar bear. One of those really cheesy polar bears that you can tell is just a costume. I get it was the 60s, and you were very limited with stuff, and this was state-of-the-art back then. But looking at it now, it's you can clearly tell that there is a human inside of there. It just looks like he's wearing a fur coat, and he's got white gloves, and it's like a mascot head. Honestly, one of the worst polar bears that I've ever seen. What's funny enough is that, the polar bear scares off Voldar, but the polar bear obviously sees Billy, and he looks inside the cave that Billy and Betty are in, sees them, tries to get them, and then gives up and leaves. Does not try to, attack anymore. Just gave up. Was just okay, I'm not doing this. So he just gave up. Eventually, though, the Martians do end up finding Billy and Betty. They take them back to the ship, and now they've been punished for running away, so they lock the kids up. Not only that, but the Martians locate Santa's workshop, break into Santa's workshop, freeze a few of the elves and Mrs. Claus with their poorly non-sound effect freeze guns, and they tell Santa, alright, you gotta come with us, and Santa's just like, okay, alright. And then word gets out that Santa has been taken by Martians. Word gets out very fast. The second that scene happens, we just see a news reporter. He's like, okay, Santa was kidnapped by Martians. And, that's it. Nobody does anything. So now, Santa, Billy, and Betty are now all in the Martian ship, and the Martians are taking them back to Mars, so this way Santa can do what the Martians want them to do. And while all this is going on, usually, they should be panicking, but Santa just seems to be alright with it. He's just chilling with Billy and Betty, who also don't seem to be surprised to see Santa at all. They're just like, oh yeah, it's Santa. They're just fine with it, they're not freaking out or anything. Not even the fact that they were kidnapped by Martians. And Santa's just having the time of his life. He's telling jokes, he's having fun, he's getting along with one of the Martians named Droppo, which is one of the goofy Martians on this ship. And it's just nobody's panicking. They have very little emotion, these characters, and even when they try to show emotions, they're all done at the wrong time. They clearly state that it's almost Christmas Eve on Earth, and it's obviously the busiest time of year for Santa, and he just gets kidnapped by Martians, and he's alright with it. So Voldar, the Martian that I said was evil, apparently has a grudge against Santa and Billy and Betty, seeing that he doesn't want any Martian kids to be happy. He doesn't think they need to be fixed in any way and wants everything to stay the way that it is. So he tries to kill Billy, Betty, and Santa. And he does so by giving the three of them a little ship tour and shows them this one room that if a certain door opens, then it just opens up into space and anyone in there gets sent out into space. Voldar, being his evil self, puts Santa, Billy, and Betty in that room, locks the door, sets the timer up to go to 60 seconds, and when the timer runs out, they're going to be sent off into space. Something that Kmart does not want happening, but Voldar's like, no, I'm going to kill these humans. So they try to figure out, what to do, and then Santa's like, okay, I have a plan, and we just don't see the plan. In fact, he doesn't even say we have a plan. He's like, Billy, where does this go to? And, that's another thing. Billy knows everything about the ship. He's been on it for an hour. He seems to know everything about this Martian ship. And mind you, in his very first scene, he was like, I don't think Martians are real, yet he knows a lot about Martians. So Kamar and Voldar have a little fight because, you know, good versus evil, but Santa, Billy, and Betty end up surviving, and they make it back to Mars, where everyone's introduced to the whole family and stuff, and Santa's just like, okay, where are these Martians kids? Let's make them happy and stuff. So Santa literally goes in, sees the Martian kids, and they don't even, like, do anything. They're just all laughing. Like, Billy and Betty introduce themselves, normal conversation, but then Santa just walks in and he just starts laughing like a psychopath. It's like he just slaughtered a whole bunch of children and he's happy about it. So at this point, we're about like an hour into this hour and 20-minute Christmas film, and Santa finally realizes that this might be a problem because Kamar informs Santa that he's never going back to Earth and he will be living on Mars to make all the Mars kids happy. And he's gonna do the exact same thing that he does on Earth, and they're all gonna make like this toy factory for Santa to live and work in, and he's basically gonna live the rest of his years on Mars, which Santa finds a bad thing. At least in that one scene. You know, he's got this whole factory, and like all he needs to do is just push a button and the toy is made. Now, I don't know how the toy is made, you know, but I guess we're just gonna leave it because we don't get an explanation for that. So then one of the other Martians, Droppo, who I mentioned earlier, he's like the goofy kind of guy, and he finds a Santa outfit that Santa brought for some reason, decides to put it on, and Voldar and a few other Martians whose names slip my mind, they're like, hey, it's Santa, let's get him. So they kidnap Droppo, who's dressed as Santa, they think he's Santa, and they bring him back to like their little cave area to where they plan on slaughtering Santa. So that's happening. At one point, Kamar finds Voldar and his like henchman kind of Martian named Strobel, gets him in like this closet, and then they have like a fight. It's all just like, you're bad, you gotta stop what you're doing, and he's like, no. So they just start fighting, and Kamar loses, and he gets knocked out. Eventually, Voldar finds out that that wasn't the real Santa that he kidnapped, and he goes into the factory to eventually attack the real Santa, but all the kids are like, no, you stay away from him, and they start like spraying him with like water guns, and they start throwing stuff at him, and Voldar is getting attacked, and then Strobel starts getting attacked, and the other Martian that's working for Voldar gets attacked, and mind you, this is called Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. What is Santa doing when all this happens? He's sitting in his chair and he's laughing. He's not doing anything. The kids are doing everything. So now we're at the end of the film and everything is basically resolved. Voldar and his other Martians are sent away off to prison. Droppo, because he's very funny and jolly and dressed up like Santa, he decides that, you know, hey, I could be Santa, and that makes Santa go like, okay, you're gonna be Santa on Mars, I'm gonna go back to Earth with Billy and Betty, and we're gonna spend Christmas on Earth, and everybody just ends the film with laughter. It's like, okay, this was fun, we'll see you later, and then we're just laughing. And that's it, that's Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. It's honestly one of the most cringiest, most awfulest Christmas movie that I think I might have ever seen in my life. It's one of those movies that you just watch and you could just laugh. Like, the whole time I was watching this, I laughed. I was questioning a lot of things. I was wondering why this thing was even a thing. But in the end, you just have to look at it and just laugh at the whole idea of this being real. Things that I will give this movie credit is it's definitely got a really good Santa, like I said. I do believe that this guy is in fact Santa. The sets are pretty cool, especially for the 60s, because back then, you know, they had very wobbly sets. It didn't look like that these sets were wobbly at all. Did I believe that, you know, it was the North Pole? Not exactly. But that doesn't mean that my opinion about the sets changed. I really like the way that the Martian ship looked. I like the way that Mars in general looked. And the thing is, there really wasn't any conquering. Like, yeah, the Martians are stopped, but a title like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, it's got a pretty badass title. And you'd think that Santa would go all, like, badass on these Martians. But the truth of the matter is, Santa really doesn't do anything in this movie. Overall, this movie is bad. That's my rating on it. It's just bad. You know, I've seen a lot of bad things this year, but this is one of them. So that's what I thought of Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Those are my whole opinions on it. Now I want to know what you think about it. I just want to know your whole entire opinion on all of this, because even if you haven't seen it, I guess you can kind of get the gist of it just by me talking about it. So what do you think about this? What do you think the whole idea about this movie? Do you agree or disagree with anything that I said in this video? Tell me in the comments, and also leave me your suggestions for whatever movie, TV show, or random thing you want me to talk about next. Thank you for watching The Wild Review. I hope everybody has a nice holiday. I'm The Wild Reviewer, and you just saw me review a thing.